Good morning, everybody. Come on in. Welcome to our experimental Memorial Day here. And let me check, see what we've got in terms of being on. Everybody, come on in. Yeah. Let's see, participants. So we've got people. I'm getting a feedback here. Let's see. Check. See what we've got in terms of being on. Okay, I will try to mute everybody here so we can not get the feedback. So we've got people. I'm getting a feedback here. Okay, I will. Okay, is everybody hearing me fine? Yay, okay, all right. We'll get started in just a minute, making sure all systems are go here. Okay, so everybody's hearing me fine and looks like we are on. Yay, great. And yeah, wave if if something else happens. As you know from Zoom, there's two different ways of looking at things. You can do the view with the gallery view and see everybody, or you can do the speaker view. Everybody's hearing me fine. It looks like we're on. Yay, great. And yeah, wave if all right, I'm still getting some feedback. On YouTube, I don't know that there is a way to see the speaker and not other people. If you're on Zoom and want to hit the camera there and turn yourself off, I don't know what that will do exactly, but we'll see. Alan is saying maybe the feedback is. It could be, yes. I think I have everything in my office turned down here. So, well, welcome everybody. We're going to see what we can do here. As I mentioned, I wanted to let folk off today. We have some intrepid volunteers, and as some of you know, I mean, Justice Bovee has been here every Sunday for the 15 months we've been shut down. I missed one Sunday that I went to brunch. So Justice is even more faithful than me. But it's been a long haul for our volunteers, especially, and really appreciate everything that people have done over time. And I appreciate everybody's questions. So I'm going to get to the questions right here. The first question is a fairly easy one, which is, are we going to have an intern next year? The answer to that question is we don't know. Probably not. We haven't heard anything, but we do hear at the last minute sometimes, because they do move around, and sometimes they'll get their life changes and they will come in at the last minute. But at the present time, we don't have any interns coming in for the fall. the intern situation has somewhat changed over time in that people at one time would come in for a year and live at the place and work full time and all of that. Nowadays, it's a little bit different just because a lot of time, as we did with Jane, you remember we broke it into 2 years. So she only worked half time. And some people are doing other kinds of situations. We do have some students involved with FUS, as you know. One is in ethical culture, but moving into Unitarian Universalism as a humanist, and will be speaking with us, I hope, this summer. And also, we are sponsoring another student as a congregation. So we are in touch with the young folk and helping them, and in my capacity at American Humanist Association, doing some of the humanist classes, and I do the intro to humanism, the first in a sequence of master's level classes. I get to know a lot of students who then do participate at FUS. So that's kind of where we are right now. Also, as you know, we do have Jay Hooper, who is affiliated clergy, and Jay is working on their dissertation, and I am a dissertation advisor. And I'm hoping we can have a session this summer talking about that. Jay has found an absolutely fascinating person to talk about, an African American. An African who came to America and was quite the hit in the early 20th century as saved from paganism or whatever. And the story is very, very interesting. And Jay's doing a great job with a dissertation about this almost forgotten figure at this point, but talking about him. So yeah, that's one of the things. But yes, we will be talking to our sponsored students this summer, I hope. That'll be one of the things that we do. Also, another question that came in, the opening and what have we learned from the pandemic? So like today, I'm able to be here talking with you. So starting next week, I'm going to try to be in the building on Sunday mornings with just the volunteers and some of the staff. And starting then, and we'll be doing a bit of a shakedown cruise on our new equipment, which is quite extensive and a learning curve. And we will be using 2 different technicians all the time. So this is going to be a learning curve, and we'll start learning about that. But the multi-platform effect will be such that some of our speakers, singers, et cetera, will be somewhere else remotely. Some of us will be in the assembly hall, and starting on probably July the 18th, we will have people, you, if you want to be, in the upper auditorium. We're hoping that will work, and if nothing changes drastically with COVID, we probably will be doing that. So what we've learned in a major way from the pandemic is about how we can do things very, very differently. We've been trying to live stream for a long time. We've been doing it a little bit, but never invested in the real, the tech to do that. But now we have, and thanks to you. And we'll see what that does. Another question that came in was, now that we are doing this, how do we reach out more? And that is a good question. One of the things we want to do, and we are doing it in one case, is to encourage smaller congregations out there. And one of the ways we can do that is by offering them music, classes, our talks. And we can guarantee that we are all humanist all the time. So if you want to rebroadcast or use some of our material, you can do that. The Camp Unistar this year will not be having live speakers, but they will be having campers. And so one of the things they're going to do are use some of our coffee and wisdoms that I do Monday through Friday, have been doing. Now I'm doing Tuesday and Thursday. They're going to use some of those as teaching tools to discussion starters. So we can begin doing that. And as you know, we have 2 online presences. We have FUS, we're mostly as assemblies. And then also we are working with this wonderful organization that is helping us expand our humanist vision, and that you too can get onto the den of conversation. And one of the things we're finding, and this has been true of First Unitarian Society for a long time, you know, secular humanism was essentially invented, religious humanism was invented at FUS, and then it goes out into the world because secular humanism, all kinds of different humanisms. But FUS has remained in the Unitarian Universalist fold, as it were. And so we have some trappings of religion, quote unquote, that other humanist organizations no longer have. Some people are made nervous by that. So one way that we could be more, I think, palatable and to other humanists is probably to have things that are not directly involved with our assemblies. We do need to expand that programming with Secular North and talking about how to do those things. So that's one of the things we'll be looking at. But yeah, we're going to continue our assemblies. We're going to continue doing the multi-platform. We're going to continue inviting people in on our various platforms so that people can deal with this, from wherever they want to in the country and in the world. Because First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis is a very, very unique kind of place. So that's kind of where we're going with that right now. Again, thanks for the questions. One of the questions I think is something that we all need to think about for ourselves and our self-awareness. But that is what does it mean to come out of this, the COVID pandemic? What does it mean to come out of the isolation? The person who asked this question said that there's suffering, sadness, a sense of loss, 15 months of isolation, a lot of frustration, a lot of feelings of procrastination. I just can't get around to doing this and that. I'm tired all the time. All I want to do is, sit and read a book. Where's my motivation? And I think a lot of us are feeling that kind of feeling. And we do need to be supportive of each other as we go through this. As you know, First Unitarian Society, we're here for you. You can contact me or our two assistant ministers anytime to talk with us, and we're all going through it. As I've said on Sunday morning several times, I'm an introvert. So for me, being at home in my little study is kind of, hog heaven. But I know that for other people, it's not. Especially people who are living alone, and so that the time can get very, very long. So we need to take care of each other, I think, and really honor where we are ourselves. I suffer from a mild agoraphobia. I don't always like going places, especially places that are loud and with lots of people. So it is a readjustment. For me, during this time, I've always been walking on the edge of type 2 diabetes because, I was born poor, and we poor folk love to eat food that lead to type 2 diabetes. And so, I've damaged my eyesight, and I'm not able to drive as much as I once did. I am going to go a back road from my condo to FUS, so I can do that. But just the restrictions that some of us have gotten over this 15 months, and we have to readjust to how we live in the world. And again, we need to be kind with each other, I think, about that. And again, anytime, just talk with us. But yeah, it's going to be a bit of a learning curve for many of us. One person sent me a question and said, I'd love to hear the live answer, but I'm going to be going to a breakfast for the first time with people in 15 months. Well, and all of those things restarting. And also for me anyway, the strangeness of the feeling of time that's going on. My wife and I went to a place that we went all the time before the pandemic. And it's just odd to think, well, wait a minute, we haven't been here for over a year, but it feels like it was just yesterday. It looks all the same. But something's, it messes with your head a little bit to do that. So yeah, we need to take care of each other, get those vaccinations, and see what we can do. At First Unitarian Society, we will be easing back in, as I say, and we hope to be back to live assemblies with people on the 18th of July, if everything goes as we hope it does with COVID. Right now, all systems are go, and it's looking very good. We'll see how that goes, but honor those feelings of loss, of sadness. Some of us haven't seen our loved ones for over a year, and again, just the oddity of being in touch with people but not being in touch with people. Some of you know that my oldest daughter got married this past year. We weren't able to go because they were quarantined at the last minute. So I performed her wedding on Zoom. But that's kind of cool, and it's very healthy. But also I didn't get to see, I haven't met the live person that my daughter is married to. So, there are all these oddities and strange things that we have to honor and remember about ourselves. Another question. I was watching with friends, yay, last night, again, getting back into the world, and watched a video of Alan Watts. Now, some of you remember Alan Watts. I talk about him on Coffee and Wisdom fairly often. He was in the 20th century, one of the great explainers of Asian religious and philosophy traditions. Watching that and his concept of oneness, that everything, including the skull that hosts our eyes that perceive the world, is all one and the same. And more easily comprehended, that the oak to be is also the acorn yet to be at the same time, not divided. So my personal belief is that the universe is interconnected all together. And my question of you is, as an atheist and a humanist, what is your philosophy about whether we are in an indifferent universe, a universe of one, or a universe with interconnected parts? Good question. and yeah, I do think about this one quite a bit. Those of you who've been following on Coffee and Wisdom know that I am what's known philosophically as a monist, mono, one. I think that everything in the universe is of the same substance. I'm also a materialist, in that I don't think there are some kind of vibrating things that we can't in some way figure out, that are supernatural, above the natural world. I think that the mind is what this thing called the brain does with all of its chemicals and its neurons. And I don't think there's a spirit world that we don't perceive. But I could be wrong about that, and I'm not, I'm not overly insistent about that. It's just what makes most sense to me. I think that everything is one, therefore, because everything is material. We are carbon-based creatures. We evolved in ways that we know about and fairly well, and we can see how that goes. Now, is the universe indifferent? Well, I think that it almost has to be indifferent, frankly. Again, within theology, it's called the theodicy question. Why do good things happen to bad people, and why do bad things happen to good people? Well, I think the answer is very, very simple. There isn't a God that gets involved in that, and the universe just doesn't care. That doesn't mean that the universe isn't comfortable, because obviously we evolved to exist in the environment we do live in. So in that way, it's friendly. We live in a Cinderella zone, as they say, not too hot, not too cold. Everything is good. But beyond that, none of us have any any special relationship with the universe that would make us in any way live more happily and better than anything else. I also think, as I've said a lot of times, that we are exactly like the other living creatures on the planet and in the universe, if they're out there. We're related to the acorn. We are related to the oak tree. We are related to the squirrels and the rabbits and the birds. All of us that have consciousness are related and of the same substance, I think. It makes a lot of sense for human beings to invent a God that loves human beings best. The Greek philosophers long ago said that, if ants, ants had could create gods, they would create gods that made sense to ants, and horses would create horses gods. I think that that's why it's like that. I don't know that. I won't insist on it. That's just what I happen to think. But I don't think there's a white guy in the sky who in some way privileges human souls and not squirrel souls and not cat souls and dog souls and that kind of thing. So for me, anyway, everything is one. That's that's refreshing. It's great to think that way. For me, anyway, it makes the world and the universe a magical place. I also, in the question of time, is the acorn and the oak, do they exist at the same time? And again, this is another question we don't know. I think it's kind of cool to think that that maybe we do exist in this continuous, in this continuum. I do know, or I think I know from reading science and philosophy, that the time as we perceive it isn't the way time works, and that time exists only really as a human construct. What actually exists is the expansion of the universe. If the Big Bang is a true theory, which it appears to be in some way, shape, or form, we are only the effect of this explosion in a particular set of time. What we call time is merely the entropy that sets up in the universe. So I know that time passes, and I have a concept of time because I have hot coffee and it gets cold. And as my coffee gets cold, I know that it's another time. But that means something to me. It doesn't mean anything to the universe. The universe is simply flying apart as I see it. And so we invent time. We know that we have, a certain amount of time on the planet, and then we're dead. But also in this monist idea, guess what? We never die, of course. It's a grand recycler of carbon that we live in, and we will be out there again in some other form. Some of you know mathematically that all of us have at least one molecule of Shakespeare in us at this point. So Shakespeare is not dead. He's out there in living in all human beings on the planet at the moment. Seems to be true to me, and science says that that's the way it is. No, everyone doesn't contain a molecule of Elvis Presley yet because he hasn't been dead that long. But after he's been dead 400 years, everyone will have some Elvis in their bodies. So that's kind of again a grand idea to me. I don't really have any feelings that I want to live in some kind of timeless place where I would get to talk with my grandmothers again. I loved them very much, but they are happily inhabiting all kinds of other things at this point, and I wouldn't want to pull them out of the trees and the birds that they now inhabit to pull them back into the existence they had when I knew them, and vice versa, me neither. So that's kind of where I live in terms of that. So monism, I do believe all of the universe, all of reality as we perceive it is one thing, and we are all that. And no, the universe doesn't care or uncare. I mean, it's just there. We just simply exist because. Yeah, that does away with the idea of intercessory prayer. um, there isn't a God that's going to change anything. What becomes problematic is things like, oh, God told me not to get on that airplane and then it crashed. Well, how come God didn't talk to the other people? So when we get into these kind of theodicy questions, as they're called in theology, there's just no bottom to the question. So it's real simple. In my view of reality, something malfunctioned on the plane, and you got lucky, and that's the way it worked. But there isn't any God that changed any of that, and it's not because you're a good person or a bad person. But try to be good, because we're social creatures, and therefore so that's really my answer to that kind of thing. Yeah, as an atheist, as a humanist, I actually call myself agnostic generally, because I don't think evolved creatures in carbon reality could ever know everything. So, again, kind of why bother worrying about those things as we go along. Another question, which I find interesting here, and all of you know that I can talk forever. Those, so I'm an old professor, so I can talk an hour at a time without even taking a breath. But one question that I found very interesting to think about, and we have talked about this some at Coffee and Wisdom in weekday mornings. But yes, we have a secular constitution. We have a constitution that guarantees this wall of separation between church and religion, between state and religion. And we humanists think that's a great thing. Leave us alone, let us find our own religious bearings, etc. That's great. But the question then is, do we have a right to ignorance? That is, because we have this separation, and we certainly see here in the US religious traditions that are homeschooling kids, teaching them that the earth is flat, or that history began 600 years ago, or blah blah blah. Do we have the right to ignorance? And that is a difficult question, I think, and it's something that we have answered in the affirmative here in the US, frankly, and we are reaping the crop that we sowed, and we continue to see where that's going. I mean, we see it certainly in the refusal to get vaccinated. Do people have the right to say no? In this country, you absolutely do. For religious reasons, for reasons of conscience, etc. That's where we're at. Now, I think, as with the gun situation, with the Second Amendment, we always have to think about where the Constitution is coming from. When the Constitution was written, most Americans were uneducated and didn't have any possibility of getting educated. They were going to be living in the outback of various places, and they were going to be poorly schooled. They were going to be taught whatever their churches taught them. And then we had this educational system that people who at least had the privilege could get into and learn other things. And in this early system, and in which we have a representative government, the assumption is that the educated elite will be the ones that rule the country, and that they will know what's going on, and other people can happily do whatever. That was a very privilege-based, a very white supremacist idea. Maybe it couldn't have been any other way at the time, but we did develop then the idea of public education. A Unitarian, Horace Mann, really expanded the idea of public education. Unitarians especially have always been very supportive of education as to bring people out of poverty and ignorance and into enlightenment, or whatever you want to call it. And we've long believed in that. And I think we still do. It's one of our sacred cows, as a matter of fact, that we think people are better off to be educated. I've been an educator most of my life. Many of you have too. So, I mean, that's, we see it as a positive social good and as a way of self-actualization. All that said, nowadays you can get educated, but refuse to do so if you wish. And what would the framers of the Constitution have thought about that? And I think it's a good question. We all watch the polls about what Americans think, and and we all believe deeply that those people are confused, and we have been finding our information in the correct places. Um, I do believe that, and that's my prejudice. I also know very well that people can live happily and very good, fulfilled lives without education, without finding out what really is out there. Learning the things that I was talking about in terms of my scientific based understanding of that the universe doesn't care, that people are no different than other things, et cetera, et cetera. Um, you can live perfectly well without that. My parents, my mother was illiterate. My father was semi-literate. As I've mentioned many times, he was drafted into the Army out of the sixth grade. That's how hillbillies did it in those days. Both of my parents went to those good old-fashioned one-room schoolhouses. And guess what? They weren't so good, especially in the outback of the Ozarks and the Appalachian Mountains. These were generally people, the teachers were generally had one semester of college was how they got there. And they were getting paid, chickens, literally, food and firewood to do that. And The schools just weren't good. I really think that my mother was illiterate because she probably was severely dyslexic. I'm dyslexic. One of my kids is severely dyslexic. I think that's probably what it was. She just thought she was ignorant. And that's how she was treated in her one-room school, just ignorant. She couldn't learn to read. So she dropped out of high school as soon as she turned 16, um, and always thought that she was dumb. That's the way the actual education system worked in the outback of America. And What did my parents do? Well, they found the kind of religion that poor farmers found. It was, Pentecostalism, and it worked for them. It's just that simple. Um, so should people have the ability to choose that? Um, Again, my parents didn't choose it. My parents worked very hard to see that I could get an education, and I did. I got overeducated, probably. It's certainly in their view. Um, so I took my rights to their fullest amount, and they never had a chance. So what about the person who does have a chance and chooses to not take that and to go into learning that the earth is flat? It's a question. And sometimes when we have a representative government or talk about it, maybe Donald Trump is representative of the American psyche. That's the scary thing about it is, you know, we have to consider that our representatives really do represent the psyche of America, and that it is not pretty. It is an externalized thing that is not in any way good. So our job is to be educated as well educated and to keep up as well as we can, I think, and to communicate that in every way that we can. Again, one of the things we want to do at First Unitarian Society and at Secular North is we want to be out there communicating in the ways that people now communicate, not with words, not with written words so much. Nowadays is YouTube and video and audio, etc. And so that, and as many of you have heard me say many times, so that the 14-year-old kid in Mississippi who has always been told, you are wrong, you're bad, you were born bad, you must obey God, et cetera, et cetera. So that kid can get online and find a different way to be. And I believe in the power of ideas, and I believe in the marketplace of ideas ultimately. And I hope that that's, I hope that's true, but it, it may not be. Carl Sagan wrote a great book, Demon Haunted World, toward the end of his life, and he said, it's always been a demon haunted world. And guess what? It always will be. And there will only be a few of us who are ready, willing, and able to get into the light and to see the actual reality that surrounds us. That very well may be the case. It's a depressing and cynical way of looking at it in one way, but we owe it to everyone we can to get the education, have a real meritocracy rather than those stored up gains that only some people have. So yeah, the separation of religion and state guarantees us the right to be ignorant, and I think that's a terrible thing. But it is part of where we do live in our country. So we'll see, and we'll hope more people decide to take the Valley Fair tickets in order to get vaccinated, even though they don't believe in it. So there you go. Last question is, what have you learned here in your tenure about FUS members? What are their blind spots and what are their strengths? Yeah, that's a great question. The strengths of First Unitarian Society members, I always tell outside speakers that you're going to be amazed. We've been talking for 15 minutes and you look out and FUS members are still listening, and you tell a joke 15 minutes into your talk and people actually laugh, because most places they don't. They stopped listening a long time ago. So that, one of the greatest things about First Unitarian Society is that people have learned to listen. And it's a tradition that we listen. And that's a great gift to give to people. Anthony Pinn has talked about that the first time he talked at FUS. He looked out on a sea of white faces, being African American, looks at a sea of white faces, and people are actually listening to him. And he was just, and as you know, Anthony Pinn is not all that easy to understand because he talks theology in some complex ways. But people at FUS actually listen, and that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Also, I think that humanists and the humanist tradition, even, we certainly don't require people at FUS to be humanists. Most people are. And I think that humanism gives a humbleness to people that we know we don't know. I hope you heard as I was speaking that, I'm a monist, but philosophically, but I don't know. It just seems to make the most sense to me and if I often say, if they find the Garden of Eden tomorrow, I'm not afraid of new evidence. If God shows up tomorrow morning, fine with me. It's just another experience. And I think that most humanists live in that place of humbleness before ultimate realities that we really don't know about. So that's one of the strengths. What's our weakness? Well, one of our weaknesses, we're not diverse. We all know that, and we know that we've been working hard on that. We know that the Twin Cities have a real problem with racism, a real problem with opportunity gaps and education gaps. We are just part of that matrix of things. How can we change it? As you know, we take trainings, we read books. Some of you have been reading the book Caste. It's a brilliant book on how racism works in America. We educate ourselves, but yet somehow the culture of First Unitarian Society is very, very difficult to change. It goes back to those early readers of Darwin back in the 1870s who were privileged people. They were educated, privileged people who could read Darwin in the 1870s. And even though certainly we are no longer in that echelon of class structure, we still have a kind of culture that comes out of that kind of education and privilege. And we all know it. I think most of us know it anyway, and we all wish it weren't true. And we all would love to change that. We're going to keep working on it. There's no doubt about that. We want more diversity, not because it makes white guilt better, but because the more voices we have in the room, the more different voices, the better our own way of being is. That's why we believe in multiculturalism as humanists. And I think that we would love to get there, and I think we will eventually. America is changing for the better in a lot of ways, demographically, philosophically. We've come to this reckoning place that I think will finally begin to question, the assumptions of the Western way of thinking, that everything has to be Greek philosophy and everything has to be science. I think we're getting there, but it's a very slow grind. So yes, FUS has a lot of strong points. We have a few blind spots as well, but we're going to keep working at it. I think, no doubt about it. Well, thanks a lot for listening today. I wanted to play for you, if I can. We'll see if I can get there. I'm going to share my screen here. We did have a song from one of our tech guys. Jacob Mullis, as you know, does our layout for us for our recorded assemblies. He's camping this weekend, but we do have a recording of him, and I would like to play that. Why do I like this song? Well, this is the most covered country song ever recorded, Long Black Veil. It's a favorite, childhood favorite. It came out in 1959. It sounds like an old Scottish ballad from the old country and 400 years old, but it's not. It was written in 1959 and recorded on a record by Lefty Frizzell in 1959. But it's the most covered country song ever. So let's take a listen. From the old country at 400 years old. It's not. It was written in 1959 and recorded on a record by
I don't hear it at all. Yes, he's singing and playing. And I unmuted myself.
I don't think anyone's hearing it.
Well, I'm told that it's not coming through. Is that true, somebody? Unfortunately, I don't know why it's not coming through.
Hey.
Yeah, no, not hearing. Well, I'm going to have to play Jacob again when we have some of our people who do know how to make this work. How about that? But I'm told that it's not coming through. Is that true? Okay, yeah. Well, thanks a lot for listening despite my technical issues today. I appreciate you all coming along, and I hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend. First Unitarian Society is very special to me, and certainly reach out, and I hope you have a good weekend as our COVID restrictions finally drop away. Thanks a lot, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.